Yeah, I think when we look at human space flights, so this region had two very important missions in the 80s, so in 1985 and 1986 from Saudi and from Syria. And then since that moment, so from 1986 or 1987, we haven't had any missions going into outer space in terms of human space flight. So the way we look at it is that the UAE astronaut program really revived that feeling of, we as Arabs, we as people from this region need to be an active player, a participant, a contributor to this field. And with that, we launched something different that the region hadn't seen before, which was a sustainable program. And when we mean sustainable is that we wanted to build an astronaut corps, initially of 2 and then now it's 4, train them, have them capable to take on any mission that we deem fit going forward. Whether that mission is a short duration mission, a long duration mission to the ISS or not, for future missions going to the moon and beyond, we want our astronauts to be capable of doing that. We launched that program in 2017. Since then, we've launched Hazza al-Mansouri in 2019, and now Sultan Al Neyadi, who has completed the 6 months in space, the longest duration mission. So that is one measure of success. But I think another element is looking at the region as well. So you've had countries now renewed interest from the Arab and Islamic world in human spaceflight. So we've had 2 Saudi astronauts that recently launched. We have a Turkish astronaut who will launch in a couple of months. We have interest from countries in the region that are looking at human spaceflight and saying, we want to be part of that. So I think that is really good news that this has become a revival of human spaceflight. And if we look at it in the last 5 years, we have had more Arabs going to space than in the last 50 years before those 5 years. So that's a big turning point. And for the first time, we've had 3 Arabs in space at the same time. So that is a dramatic change compared to what we had in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. And one last point I would say is, when we look at Sultan's mission, this mission is historic. It's a very difficult mission. And if we look at the duration of this mission, the amount of time Sultan has spent in space today is more than all Arabs have spent previously combined. So that shows you the impact of such a mission and how this mission can be meaningful for the region in terms of outreach, education, and inspiration, but also from a scientific, from a technological, and from a cultural perspective. Well, definitely I think when we look at a mission like this, it's a first for the UAE. So there are goals that we have as a country and as a program that we wanted to achieve, and I think we've achieved those, which is really, number one, show the difference of why we send an astronaut to space for 8 days or for 9 days, as we did with Hazza al-Mansouri, and then why are we sending another astronaut for 180 days? So 20 times longer, more than 20 times longer to space. What is the reason for that? And I think throughout that mission, this is one of our objectives, to showcase that what can be done on a longer term mission, in terms of science, in terms of all of the elements that we spoke about. But I think the key factor is today, we as humans have this gene of exploration, whether it's 200 years ago exploring the oceans or discovering America, whatever it may be, or looking over what's over that mountain. Now in terms of space, yes, this is the International Space Station orbiting Earth. But for us to go to Mars or for us to go to the moon, we have to spend longer durations. We cannot go to the moon for 3 days and come back and there's a small impact. Or we cannot go to Mars and spend less than 2 years or 3 years on that journey. So for us to be able to take a journey to Mars that will take us 10 months, and then we have to stay there for a year or 2 and then come back 10 months, that's a 3-year return journey. We have to understand what happens to the human body when it gets into those situations of staying in space for a long duration mission. So this is one of the major reasons why we have Sultan in space for a long duration mission. So I think strategically that's very important for us as a country, but it's also very important for the global human space exploration roadmap. All of humanity currently, all of the space programs are looking at going to Mars and Moon, and these types of missions support that goal. Well, definitely, this has been a long mission for Sultan and for the center, and the number one priority for any space program or human spaceflight program is astronaut safety and astronaut recovery. So Sultan's, once his mission finishes and he's landed safely, inshallah, all of the focus will be on crew health, crew safety, and at the same time, recovering the scientific data. So there's a lot of data, blood draws, a lot of elements that are related to what we spoke about in terms of studying the effects of humans, long-term human spaceflight on humans. Part of that is taking all of those samples once they land and they are there. But mainly there's going to be 2 weeks of rehabilitation, recovery, learning how to live in gravity again, the vestibular system, the muscles, the bones, everything recovering. And then of course Sultan will be coming back to the UAE, and we have a very in-depth program for him here and in the United States. Part of the United States is recovery and continuation of the science over the next 6 months. And part of what's going to happen in the UAE is, of course, continuing giving back to the community, sharing the objectives of the mission and the accomplishments of the mission, and really giving a chance for UAE people to meet Sultan, interact with him, and hopefully be inspired and learn about space from him. At the end of the day, what we would like is always to try new things, to try exciting things. And you know, me personally, I look at exploration of the moon and Mars as the most exciting things for us as humans going forward. It's been 50 years, over 50 years since we went to the moon. And getting back to the moon in a sustainable and a different way is one of the most exciting things I think we as a community are doing today. And then of course, maybe in the next decades, getting humans to land on Mars, and hopefully the UAE being part of that, would be very much in line with the late Sheikh Zayed's ambition.